to the Smart Property Investment Show with your host, Phil Tarrant.
G'day everyone, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Interesting one today. I'll go back to this original story of Smart Property Investment. We launched a product probably about 5 years ago, and the idea of it was to give a real inside world of view on a property portfolio and how to invest in property. We launched the title. It's been a great success, but one of the benchmarks or the backbone of the title has been our portfolio and growing our portfolio from scratch. So before we launched the title, I was not a property investor. I'm just a journo, and I was just grinding away, writing stories, talking about other people's experiences in property. And what came really clear to me was that a lot of the time when you spoke to investors or you spoke to professionals or you spoke to people with a property portfolio, you never really got the true story. A lot of times it was just frankly bullshit. So a real tenet to the Smart Property Investment title was that we grew our own portfolio and gave a real inside view, warts and all, on how we would go about building a portfolio. Fast forward about 4.5, 5 years, we've got a great little portfolio now with about 11 properties in it. So we've worked pretty hard and accelerated with it. A lot of the feedback, my job as the host of the Smart Property Investment Show is to, I typically ask questions to other people, obviously drawing on some of my experience and insights. I typically try and get into the minds of other investors and understand what makes them tick and what they do. A lot of the feedback that we've had, though, has been when I have spoken about our portfolio, people really enjoy it. It goes back to the original reason why, or one of the original reasons why we set up the title was to show people how to invest in portfolio, invest in property. So today I've got my regular co-host with me, Vivian Kelly. Viv, how you going?
I'm good, thanks, Phil.
So we're going to put the shoe on the other foot this time around. So, we've been getting emails from all over the place, Viv, about people wanting to know more about my story, I guess.
Yes, Phil, everyone's very interested to hear what you're doing, and you're always asking people questions, and I know you don't love to talk about yourself, but today you're going to have to, because people just want to know more about what's going on with your portfolio and the realities of investing while you're sort of owning your own business, raising a young family, all the things that you talk to our guests about every week. People want to know what's going on with you. So the tables have turned, and we're going to be asking you some of the reader questions today.
That's cool. We did a podcast with our buyer's agent, the guys over the Right Property Group, Steve Waters and Victor Kumar. It was probably about a month or so ago.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 weeks ago.
And this is pretty much where all this interest has originated, because we've only got 20 odd minutes doing a podcast, and I can talk about property all day, every day. So those questions that you've got, we're going to run through them, and I hope to give some insights. So as you've said, I don't like talking about myself too much, but I'm happy to talk openly and honest about a portfolio. And if you go to the website smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, which is just about to relaunch, our portfolio is going to be front and center on that. So we've been writing about it for years and years and years, and there's some great features, and it's all going to be there. We're going to have a lot of the numbers, some graphs and charts, some really good pictures about the properties and the story for each of them. And, I've spoken about some of the mistakes that we've made and what we could have done better, but I'm also happy to chat about what we've done right. So, Viv, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can just, if you're going to give me a hard time, I'm cool with that. if you're going to be nice, I'm all right with that as well. So.
Well, I'd like to keep my job for this week, Phil, so I won't go too hard. But I think we can kick off just by asking what you often ask investors, which is, why do you invest in property? What motivated you? Was it just because you were writing about it? Is it a wealth creation thing? What's the drive?
It's probably three things. The first one is the fact that we wanted to show a real life way to go from absolute zero in investing in property and building a portfolio. So that's one of the objectives, was that we could share our story. Outside of that, it's wealth creation. I enjoy working, and I plan to work forever, just because I just enjoy the game. I enjoy the chase, but I want to create wealth as well. So to go about providing for a comfortable retirement, it's important, and not just for myself, but also, for my family and generationally as well. To be able to be fortunate enough to be in a position where I can create wealth, and it's hard work, don't get me wrong, but create wealth and do it in the way in which I feel and I believe is responsible and sustainable. I've always said with property investment that it's it's not a get rich quick scheme. Investing in property is easy if you do it right. And if you think you're going to make your millions overnight, property's probably not the right place. And if you're able to make your millions overnight in property, you've either got heaps of cash already and you can be speculative, or you're being extremely risky. And, it might be good times at the moment, but often in that case, bad times around the corner. I guess the third thing also, investing in property, is that much like business, and I view property investment as a business, I like being good at it and I like to win. So if I can build a property portfolio that's better than everyone else's, I just get a bit of a kick out of it,
So speaking of winning, do you have an end goal, or is it a bit like Pokemon? You've got to catch them all, and once you've started, you can't stop.
I don't really understand the Pokemon craze. I started reading some articles about it. I don't really get it, but for I understand people getting hit by cars because they're chasing imaginary characters around the world. But, I think much like Pokemon, that there's always got to be another Pokemon.
Yeah.
So I think a property investor, you've got it in your veins. Once you get going, it's quite addictive, much like Pokemon, but it's quite addictive in that you just keep growing and growing and growing. And the strategy we had and the rationale for investing in property early on is sort of different to what it is today. And I think all investors will find that the more you invest, the more your goals change. So at a point in time, for my private financial position, I'm not relying on my superannuation to guide me through retirement. It's going to be nice, and I invest my 9.5% in super, and I don't have an SMSF. I just have it in an industry fund, and for me, it's just a bit of diversification that's going to sit there. And you know what, when I do retire, that should be a nice little sum, and it's going to provide for me. But for me, the goal is to be able to have an income when I am retired. And so I don't see myself retiring, but when I am retired, so that I do have passive income coming in, and that's just going to give me options and choice.
So have the goalposts sort of moved as your portfolio's grown? Because I've probably known you for about 5 years now, and in that time you've gotten married, had 2 kids, your business has grown pretty rapidly. So I imagine that you've had to sort of move your expectations as your portfolio's grown and your business has grown and your family has grown. How has that worked?
It's a really interesting conundrum, really. The beauty about property is that I've got some stocks and shares and stuff, but I do that for shits and giggles mainly. Just a bit of a laugh. But the beauty about property is that if I don't focus on it for 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
It's still there. And because of the way I invest in property and the fact that I have a particular strategy, and I'm sure we'll go through that, but I have a particular strategy, which means that if I don't do anything, the properties that I bought have been good properties. They're not costing me a lot of money to hold them. They're in growth areas. They're well tenanted. I have very low vacancy rates on all the properties in our portfolio. So if I don't do anything, it's okay. They're just going up in value, up in value. So that doesn't particularly take a lot of strain on me. And with growing a business and Momentum Media, it's it's quite a large media company now, that employs a lot of people. But I can concentrate my focus and attention on that and growing and evolving it, knowing that my property's just ticking along in the background. And, every night I can jump in there, do some stuff, buy another couple of properties and sit back again and just wait for nature or time to take its course. So it gives me the flexibility to be as involved as I want to be involved. And to be fair, if you look at, and you go to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, you'll see when we've bought stuff, it's quite lumpy. Like we'll go for a spurt and we'll buy stuff, then we won't do anything for a while. We'll do it again, we won't do anything for a while. And that's both a product of cash flow. So, we'll pull some money out, go hard, and then wait for those properties to build up again so we can extract some more equity. But it's also associated with the way in which that we grow our business. We prioritise growing the business, and property is always, I prioritise family. Yeah. Prioritise growing the business, and then property is a very poor third to that. So that's reflective in when we buy stuff. We haven't bought anything for about a year and a half, and I think that last podcast I was chatting to you about with the guys, our buyers agents. I laid down some challenges to myself to try and get me going again, and we've just finished all our sort of financials and stuff. So we're in a position to do that, but you know what, I think I'm sort of on track, and I'm going to start focusing on property, but then something will pop up in work which I'll want to put my time and attention to. So I'll just neglect property.
So do you want to give the listeners a bit of an update, just in case they haven't heard you talk about your portfolio before? How many properties do you have, and what's the value of the portfolio, and where are you sort of at right now?
Yeah, sure. So the value, and I apologise if it takes me a little while to get this out. It's on a very small spreadsheet because there's so many properties. But I'm on one small little A4 here. But the total valuation of our portfolio now, this was done about, it's probably 6 months old now. So it's probably up a little bit, but it's about 5.1. I'd say between 5.1 million total valuation. The total debt in our portfolio is about 3.265 million. So when you look at it as a portfolio, our LVR is about 63%, which means that there's quite a lot of fat in there.
Yeah.
If I want to start refinancing, the total interest payments for us. Let's talk equity, right? So there's a total equity of just shy of 2 million. If I wanted to refinance everything to 90%. I can pull out quite a lot of money. If I want to refinance at 80, there's still quite a lot of fat there for me to pull out. So if I refinanced everything to 80, I could pull out 850 grand.
Okay.
And that's a big war chest to go and buy a whole bunch more properties. If I want to refinance at 70%, I could pull out sort of about 350 grand. So 330 grand here. So depending on my risk appetite and where I am and what time I've got, it sort of influences what we can do. So, the nutshell is it's about $2 million of equity. Total valuation is about 5 million. The rent, by and large, covers the mortgages, so it's not costing me a lot to hold these properties.
So 850K potentially that you could pull out there. That's quite a lot for you, because I know when I look at your portfolio, you're often sort of buying in the sub 400 range. So that's quite you could go out there and do some serious damage with that. Are you looking at buying again soon? Yeah,
absolutely. So we're just going through the process of doing all our tax returns, and the more properties you get, the more complicated it gets. Depending on how you invest or the structure that you invest within, we invest in trust structures, which has its own level of, it's a little bit more complex than investing in your own name. It's a little bit more of a rigmarole with your tax returns. But we're ready to buy. The fact is now I've got most of the requirements in order in terms of our tax returns and our financials with our portfolio, that we can go to our mortgage broker now and actually start extracting that cash. So, we'd still be looking in that sub 400 range. Our strategy as an investor, as investors, is we identify under market value properties in growth areas, typically within the lower spectrum of properties. So, when we launched investing in property, and our first property was in North St Mary's, which for our listeners not from Sydney, it's western suburbs of Sydney, just out past Blacktown, in between Blacktown and Penrith, pretty much directly west from the CBD. We bought that first property in August 11. So what's that? 5 years ago.
Yeah,
it's 5 years ago next month. So that was our first property. First property we bought was August 11. Second property bought was September 11th. Third property bought was October 11th. And fourth property bought was December 11th. So there's 4 properties in a handful of months. They were all out in the western suburbs of Sydney. We bought at an exceptionally good time for growth in that marketplace. And a number of those properties have doubled in value in that period of time.
And were you I know that you grew up out in the western suburbs of Sydney. Were you sort of comfortable investing out there? Because I won't lie, I grew up in the inner west of Sydney, and there was quite a stigma about the West and what it was like out there. And I know that there is still a bit of that stigma, but obviously you were comfortable going out there and you've done really well from it. So what would you say to people who do sort of let that stigma get in the way of their property investment?
If people don't invest in an area because they think, well, they've got some preconceived ideas that it's not a good investment because of the people that live out there, don't go out there. Leave those properties for me to buy.
Phil will catch them all.
Seriously, it's and I hear it all the time. People think, I've got a cross sort of spectrum of friends. I grew up in Blacktown, and I think it's great out there. I know the area, I know the people, I know the mindsets. Just good, hard-working Australians just trying to get by. You know what? Most of them, a lot of the people in those areas from, say, Blacktown out to Penrith, they probably cannot afford, will never be able to afford to buy their own home because of their situation. But you know what? They're house proud people. They need somewhere to live, and when you look at 1 in 5 Australians live in the western suburbs of Sydney, you'd be mad not to be investing out there. And the preconceived ideas that people that I speak to have go, oh, why would you want to invest out there? Because they'll wreck your house or they won't pay their rent. It's frankly a load of bullshit. Yeah. And if people don't invest for those reasons, that's completely up to them. So we've done really well out in the western suburbs of Sydney. I'm proud to call myself a Westie. I think it's brilliant. And the West, as always, delivers. It's been delivering some great capital gains for me out there. We went hard out there for the first 5. Then we moved up into the Central Coast, Berkeleyvale, up near, Gosford Way, Wyong Way. And then we bought a sort of more blue chip property in Hornsby. Then we moved from there up into Queensland, so up into the sort of Loganshire way. So, and then down into Wollongong. So that's pretty much a quick. I know we're working really fast through this, but that's a really quick sort of snapshot of the portfolio and how it looks right now.
Okay, great. I might move on to some sort of reader questions. A lot of investors do write in and say they're sort of struggling psychologically because they've started investing, they've got the bug, but suddenly every friend, acquaintance, former friend, barbecue buddy, and armchair expert has an opinion about what they're doing wrong, mainly. You've bought in the wrong area, the property bubble is going to burst, you're safer just having your money in the bank, you paid too much, you shouldn't have gone to Western Sydney. Is this a problem you've encountered? People love telling other people when they're wrong. Do people push back on you when you're sort of talking about your portfolio and your successes?
If people want to ask me about my portfolio, I'm happy to talk about it. Obviously talk about it on the show. It's one of the reasons why we do what we do. I'm happy to share my experience, and I guess by doing that, a lot of people who have been investing in property or were looking to invest in property have probably changed the way they think about property. And I've got a good mate of mine in particular who was investing a long time before me, and he had a very, very different strategy to what he has today. Today he does very similar to what I do, finding under market value properties at sort of range, etc. You can get caught up in too much noise around property. You just got to think, and it sounds cliche, but you just got to focus on the fundamentals. Why do you invest in property? You invest in property because, number one, you want the thing to go up in value. Number two, you want to have a pretty good yield, right? Two different things. If you can get both of those, excellent. The stuff that we look for both. We want to find somewhere that's going up in value, a property that's going up in value in an area, and that the rent pretty much or typically covers most of the costs associated with it. We go for both. You can't always get both. Sometimes you get one or the other. And as your portfolio grows, you might start looking at properties where you need to increase your cash flow. So you look for the yielding properties. But if cash flow is good, you can look for more capital growth type properties. But people get caught up, I think, too much in listening to what other people say. A lot of times just turn it off. You pick up a paper or listen to the radio or TV at any time, and there's some doomsday merchant talking about how Australian property is so overpriced, and they'll be using, World Bank Index rankings or ratings. Is property as an asset class at the moment in Australia overpriced? There's an argument for that. It's when you look at what property as a proportion of your annual salary was 20 years ago to what it is today, it's blown right out. So is Sydney in that space? Yes, it is. Why is that the case? Market forces, foreign investment, there's a whole bunch of things. And obviously APRA and are looking to take hold of this, and the banks have changed a lot of the policies as a result of it. But, if you listen to people, you're always going to hear bad things about anything. So you need to have confidence in yourself and understand that what you're doing is a good investment. And if you don't think it's a good investment, or you can't get any advice or interpretation of that, you shouldn't be investing in property. But that said, I'm very fortunate, much like yourself, is that you can pick up the phone and you can talk to whoever you want in property in Australia. And that's a privilege of being a journalist, that we're allowed to have those conversations. And you can call up RP Data, you call up realestate.com, you could speak to a bank, and you probably get into a very senior person there and ask them about what's going on, and you're going to get some really good insights. But that's available to everyone. If you have uncertainty or concerns, speak to people, but don't listen to the doomsday merchants. That's simple.
The other big question that I get almost weekly about your portfolio is, you obviously head up quite a rapidly growing business. You've got a lot of salaries to pay. I'm sure you've got quite a few bills to pay, and people wonder sort of how you manage that and how you're not hitting that serviceability wall when you've got, so much going on and you're, self-employed. I have a number of self-employed people who have much smaller operations than you do contacting and wondering how you've sort of managed to keep going.
Yeah, I think there's probably two things. Number one, our business is profitable. So I'm able to show to a potential lender, years of financials where we have just constant profitability. So that gives them a lot of confidence and satisfaction that I can afford to pay stuff. But I think the other side of that is that, from when we set this business up from the very first day, I've only ever paid myself like I was an employee.
Okay.
So I have a history of regular payments every single month on the 30th or 31st of the month, whenever the payroll falls, of getting paid. And I could show a bank 10 years of that.
Yeah.
So you match that along with, profitability and also, the structure and nature of the trust that we have all our property in. I can paint a good picture to the bank. Even though I'm self-employed and it has its certain challenges, the bank is happy to lend me money because I can afford to repay it. And it's as simple as that. So I tick off all the serviceability requirements, and sometimes it gets a bit tricky and depending on I don't show a PAYG pay slip, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more complicated than that, to be fair, but I'm very fortunate that I have a mortgage broker who is the best in the business, who's able to speak to a bank and actually articulate to them, here is how Phil, this is the makeup of his income.
Yeah.
And as a result of this, you should be lending him money. You should be falling over yourself to lend him money because he's a very, very good customer to have.
And look, Phil, I love telling people that I'm busy, to the point where when my brothers ask me, how was your week? And I say busy, they say, oh, as opposed to all of your non-busy weeks. But you are genuinely one of the busiest people I've seen. You are very, very time poor. How do you manage a portfolio when you've got so many other balls in the air?
Not very well, to be honest with you. That said, I'm pretty hard on myself. But if you want to look at the mechanics of the portfolio, everything is managed by a managing agent. I'm happy to pay for someone to do that because I don't want to be spending my weekend or evenings out fixing someone's hot water system or a leaking tap and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not what I'm going to do. I'm happy to pay for someone to do that. And you know what? They can do it much better than me anyway. So that's one way I manage it, and I manage it well. Look, bills get paid mostly on time. The managing agent pay most of the bills, so that's all cool. It pretty much runs itself. I get a bit tardy sometimes with the financials around it, giving the information that our accountant needs to be able to complete the work he needs to do, and that sort of goes out further to our mortgage broker not getting all the information he needs. So, in terms of managing it, the functionality of it, it's all cool. It's ticking along, no worries whatsoever. Where the downside is on the management of my portfolio is that, could I have another 5 or 10 properties in that? Yeah, I probably could, but I just haven't got around to it. And a lot of that is management. But as I was saying earlier, I've got to prioritise certain things. So if I don't buy a property, so what? It's just a bit of a missed opportunity. I'm fortunate that the business that I run has exceptionally good people within it. That everyone's just grinding and hustling every day, getting the job done. And I, that's my primary focus is to support that. But, for any of our listeners who think about managing a portfolio, and, once you get sort of 10 plus properties in a portfolio, it takes a fair bit of management, but if it's good administration, good procedures, some good software around, it can really help you do that. But just don't bite off more than you can chew, and don't think you need to do everything.
And what about any nightmare stories? You sort of talk quite positively about your portfolio. You're honest when you make mistakes, but overall it sounds like it's been quite a positive experience and quite a profitable experience. Yeah. But, has anything gone wrong, whether it's with a property or with a tenant or with a purchase, or has it just been a perfect ride for you?
No, stuff always goes wrong, but I'm sort of wired a particular way that I understand whether and as I said beforehand, having a property portfolio is like running a business. Things aren't always going to be perfect. So I've got a bit of experience in running a business, and I know that you can't control absolutely everything. You got to roll with the punches. So every day I deal with challenges, and I'm wired a particular way just to get on with it and change it. So with the property portfolio, there's been lots of times when things haven't worked out as well as I wish they would have. Like real practical stuff about things going wrong or breaking and that. You need to fix a roof or whatever. You can't change that. You just got to get on with it. Some of the renovations we've done have taken longer than what should have taken. As a product of us trying to tell a story about it, but also a product of me being a bit disorganised sometimes, and not prioritising it. So not getting tradies in the right time and things stacking up. And the property we have out in Cambridge Park out near Penrith, great properties, double in value, but that renovation probably took sort of a month or so longer than what it should have, purely because of not being as effective, efficient as I could have. I don't have any nightmares. It's not like there's nothing really in the portfolio which I'd call a dog. That just brings it all down. They're all standalone, very good properties. And I'm not going to take credit for all of that. I'm obviously steering the growth of this portfolio, but I'm heavily reliant on, we'll call it an A team. That's what we call it in smartpropertyinvestment.com. The people who help me do that. And this portfolio wouldn't be as good as it is or as big as it is if I didn't have people to support me. And that's our buyer's agent, our mortgage broker, our accountant. They're a great team, and they're the guys that typically give me a boot up the backside to tell me to keep investing and keep going, or just agitating me to sort of prioritise property over other things. But those guys are cool. And look, the buyer's agent, I pay a premium to use them, but they do what they do very, very well.
Look, Phil, we could talk about this all day, but I'm conscious that we do have a meeting to get to. So I'll just wrap it up by asking you the question that you often ask people when they come in to chat to you, and that's, what would you sort of go back and tell yourself with all of the knowledge and experience that you have now? If you could go back to Phil of 2011 before he started investing, what would you say, or what would you tell him to do differently?
I would have said, if I go back to Phil at 2011, I would go, mate, when you bought those pretty much a property a month for 5 months, just keep doing it. Actually buy more of them. Looking back at that, I could have afforded to buy more at that point in time.
Yeah.
I'm reasonably risk averse as a person. I like to, I don't, and I think maybe it's a product of growing up out in the western suburbs. I don't like worrying about money. I hate the idea of having to worry about money. So I like to feel comfortable. I don't feel like I am a stretch beyond my means. So I think that's a product of why I didn't go as aggressively as what I could have at the start. But if I could do that again, I would have bought a shitload of properties out in the western suburbs back in 2011. Yeah, absolutely. That's probably it. Is that a mistake? Probably, but it's not a bad mistake. It's sort of a missed opportunity more than anything. But that said, the strategy that we have of identifying under market properties in these areas which are going to grow, there are opportunities just like that else in other places of Australia right now. And why I can't achieve that right now out in the western suburbs of Sydney, we've been achieving it in sort of Loganshire up in Brisbane and other areas around southwest Queensland. Is the growth going to be there like it was in the western suburbs of Sydney, sort of around the 28, 29, 2010, 11 time? Probably not. You're not going to see those sort of big growth curve coming through, but the same situation exists. I can follow the same strategy there as well. I can find under market value properties, and my buyer's agent helps me do that in areas which are going to go up in value, and I get good yields on it. So I'll just keep focusing on those areas, and you know what, that area tomorrow or in 2-3 years time is where I'm going to be looking to find and identify right now to get the same thing.
All right, Phil, well, I'll throw back to you now.
All
but
right.
Thanks for answering those questions. And anyone listening, if you ever have any questions that you want Phil to answer about his portfolio, just send them through to editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, and I'll get Phil back on his own show.
Yeah, I think we should do this more often. I can talk about this portfolio, and we can drill right down into individual properties and stuff as well. Some great stories in this. I look at that, that property we have in Cambridge Park. We bought that at like $230-something thousand by memory, $236,000. It's valued today at sort of like 600 odd grand, and we spent 40 grand renovating, to be fair, but there's some really good individual stories in this portfolio, and we write about it, and if you go to the website, you can find them all. But, maybe we can get into the nitty gritty of these these sort of actual properties and how we've gone about doing little individual case studies. So if people want to hear that, let us know, and I'm happy to chat about that. We can run you through reno numbers, how we sort of did deals with different kitchen guys and tilers to get stuff cheap, and et cetera, how I lean on mates to get jobs done. But I think it's good. It's cool. That's why we do this. So thanks for everyone tuning in. Email us at editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au for any other questions. If you want any clarity around anything, happy to answer that. If you want to give us a phone call as well, you can track us down. I'm happy to have a chat with you. Keep tuning in. We'll be back again next week. Remember to go check us out at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Where else are we, Viv? All over the place,
Everywhere.
aren't we? Everywhere. keep the reviews coming on the podcast, guys. It's tracking really well. It's one of the most popular business podcasts in Australia at the moment, the Smart Property Investment Show. So we want to maintain that position, and I want to keep growing it. So keep engaged, keep connected, keep telling us what you want. You can follow me at Philip Tarrant on Twitter. That's pretty much it for today, I think.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks
Phil.
Viv. No, thanks for the questions. I don't normally like the shoe being on the other foot, but that said, if anyone's got if you want to come on and share your portfolio or share your story, we'd love to hear from you. Just get in touch. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.